Good morning, everyone. Welcome to BBC News. I'm your host, Moddaber. Today, we'll be joined by financial advisor and economic expert, Ryano. How are you, Ryano?
Good, thank you. And how are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Now, for the first section today, we'll be talking about the ever-increasing inflation rate in Australia and how it is affecting our citizens. Now, Ryano, can you please explain to the people what is meant by the term inflation rate?
Alright, so the term inflation basically means a general increase in prices and fall in purchasing value of money. Inflation rate measures the rate at which the general level of prices in a specific economy has risen in a particular period of time, resulting in the fall of the purchasing value of money.
Ooh, so how is the inflation rate in Australia measured?
So, the inflation rate in Australia is measured in many ways, but the best known way of measuring inflation rate is known as the Consumer Price Index, or CPI for short. Basically, the Consumer Price Index measures the percentage changing the price of a basket of goods and services consumed per household. This change is measured by the Australian Bureau of Statistics, or ABS, and is published once every 3 months, also known as a quarter in economic terms. In these 3 months, ABS collects prices for thousands of items, which are then grouped into 87 different categories and 11 groups. They then calculate the price change of each item from the previous quarter and combine them to work out the inflation rate for the entire CPI basket. This is calculated through the use of the inflation formula, by the prices from year 2 minus the prices from year 1 divided by prices from year 1 and then multiplying the prices by 100.
Okay, so now that we know how the inflation rate is measured, how does the annual inflation rate of Australia look like now and 10 years ago?
The annual inflation rate in Australia fell to 3.0% in Q3 2021, from a 12.5-year high of 3.8% in Q2, after the downward inflation rate of COVID-19, and compared with market estimates of 3.1%, with continued effects of the unwinding of free childcare in 2020. Prices rose for transport, 10.4% versus 10.7% in Q2, alcohol and tobacco, 4.4% versus 6.7%, furnishings 6.0% versus 16.9%, and recreation 2.3% versus 2.5%. At the same time, cost of communication fell further, negative 1.0% versus negative 1.3%. In contrast, prices went up faster for food, 1.3% versus 0.7%, health 4.9% versus 4.8%, and insurance and financial services 1.1% versus 0.6%. Also, housing prices rose 1.6% after a 0.2% fall in Q2. On a quarterly basis, consumer prices went up 0.8% in Q3, the same as in Q2 on rising construction input costs due to supply disruptions and higher automotive fuel prices, with the CPI's automotive fuel series hitting its highest in a half century. RBA trend mean CPI rose 2.1% in Q3, the most since Q4 2015, after a 1.6% rise in Q2. Quarter on quarter, the index rose 0.7%. Basically, this indicates that the inflation rate in Australia has risen to a point where it is at an all-time high in Q1 of 2021, compared to the last 10 years, contributing to higher prices on many consumer items. But it has lowered slightly as of October of 2021.
So how has the COVID-19 pandemic affected the inflation rate in Australia and the world's economy?
Well, due to the negative effects of COVID-19 on the Australian economy, the inflation rate drastically decreased from a CPI of 2.2% in Q1 of 2020 to a CPI of negative 0.35% in Q2 of 2020, which is similar to inflation rates around the world which have also been lowered. The impact of government policy reactions to the COVID-19 epidemic, as well as swings in global oil prices, have dominated recent consumer price movements. Rents have dropped significantly since March, as border restrictions contributed to an increase in rental vacancy rates, and state governments required landlords to negotiate rent reductions for tenants in financial trouble. Furthermore, policy-driven pricing changes, including the brief nationwide implementation of free childcare, free preschool in some areas, and a variety of price freezes for administered services. To add on, social distance limits have resulted in significant changes in consumption patterns, most notably a shift away from spending on services and towards spending on domestic items and supermarket food, which has influenced pricing decisions. The severe decrease in economic activity, along with an increase in spare capacity, has also contributed to restrain underlying inflation during the last year.
Well, that's nice, but how will the inflation rate look like in 10 years from now? And what will the effects of it be if the inflation rate continues to rise?
Well, it is very hard to predict whether or not the inflation rate will rise or not 10 years from now. In Australia, the government target rate of inflation is around 2.3% each year. However, from the recent trends in inflation rate as of late 2021, we can see that there is an upward trend in inflation rate due to the strengthening of the economy after recovery from lower inflation rates in Q2 of 2020 because of the COVID-19 situation. It looks like the inflation rate will continue to increase over the next 10 years, as graphs and statistics show that the inflation is increasing in a rapid state ever since mid-2021. As of now, inflation looks like it's increasing pretty well, even into the next 10 years. If the inflation rates continue to increase as it is likely that we will see many effects due to this, such as increases in costs of items within the economy, higher wages, better investment, more growth, better facilities, and less unemployment.
Well, thank you for your time here, Ryano. It was a pleasure to have you on the channel today.
The pleasure is